Today we're talking all about vacant land, how to find it, how to sell it, and most importantly, how to market it. My name is Rick and everybody says, hey, listen, can I do the same thing with vacant land as I do with regular wholesaling houses? And it's always been an affirmative yes. And so people always say, hey, what is the primary difference between vacant land and single family houses? It's just one simple thing. One has a house on it and one doesn't. Now, let's talk about the pros and cons before we jump into it. It's real simple. Single family houses has just more education, more background on it, and therefore more people do it. And honestly, it can be much more profitable because there is more built on land than there is vacant land, with the exceptions of some states in the Midwest and like the Northwest where you just can't even develop. So the reality is you can do vacant land. And here's the one advantage I want to tell you about vacant land. And this is my favorite part about it, and nobody seems to talk about it, is that vacant land, let me pull it up here. Vacant land, there's less information available to people that own vacant land. So just like when you go to sell a single family home, the first place is what? What do people go to? Yes, they go to Zillow and they get their estimate. And they go, that's what the value of that land is, of that house is, and that's what I'm going to take. And for the most part, it's pretty accurate. So between Zillow and Trulia and Redfin and Realtor.com, the owner of a home has a ton of information, a ton of data available. And that's actually been a little bit problematic to us wholesalers in the long run. Listen, I'm the first to admit, when I started doing this, outside of going to a realtor, nobody really had an idea what a house would sell for. And to be honest with you, I did take full advantage of that. But I did have to work with realtors when I started way back 21 years ago. But we're here in 2024. So what I'm saying is, if you're doing the vacant land, is one of the advantages of you as a wholesaler in vacant land is that there is less information available to the seller of that vacant land. Bottom line, check it out. Go on Zillow, go on Trulia. The pricing is, the estimates are so terrible, even the owners of the land don't believe it. So what they do is you buy a land and you forget about it. And most people buy a land with two goals in mind. Number one, they're going to want to build a dream house, a retirement house, or a second home on it. And it's way out in the future. We might as well buy the land because it's never going to be cheaper than it is today. And that's how most people buy land. The second person buys land as an investment. I buy the land, I pay the taxes on it every year, and I am hoping and speculating and crossing my fingers it explodes in value somewhere down the road. I've done this. The problem is you don't know if it's going to be 3 years, 10 years, or 30 years. And that's the problem with buying and holding land. Now, here's the really cool part. My favorite part is when people buy land, they buy it really cheap and they don't keep up with the current values of the land. They got an idea, but like they don't know like the up and coming trends. So this is the value you add as a wholesaler when dealing with vacant land. Now, you can actually make a ton of money with vacant land, but for the most part, on average, you're going to make a little bit less than you do single family homes because there's less inventory. It's a slower process and you're just selling the land and that's it. So let's dive into details on how to get this done. So as I said right here, as I just highlighted, there's less info available to landowners on pricing models, on algorithms, all this other stuff. And for that reason, most landowners really don't know the current value. Most of them will reach out to some sort of realtor and try to get the numbers. So this brings me back to 2003 when I started wholesaling single family houses. This was the exact way we did it. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot more houses for inventory. There is vacant land, particularly in my markets, but you need to know and size up your market doing that. Florida's running out of land other in the middle of the state, which nobody wants to live there because it's a swampland. And this is what we're dealing with. So that last info is your catalyst to make a ton of money in wholesaling. So let me give you an example. I bought quite a few lots in Palm Bay, which is a wonderful market in Florida. I'm already there, so if you want to join and compete with me, come on over. It seems like everybody from Arizona comes over to Florida to invest. So anyways, I bought it. It was a whopping $2,500. I bought it between $2,200 and $3,500. And honestly, I owned them for 15 years. 15, guys. The original plan was 3 to 5. It never worked out. And so I got a phone call just from someone like you, and I'm going to teach you how to do this. And the guy goes, listen, I'll give you 12 grand for each lot. And, I asked for 15. I think we settled on 13. I sold them. Here is my philosophy, and I want you to understand this because you got to think like your seller. So I'm thinking like the seller of a vacant land. I paid 3 grand on average for these lots, and I basically got a 4.5 times return on my money. I don't care. That's all. I look at what I bought it for, and I look at what the person's making me an offer for. And that's how people make quick decisions on land. It was kind of a pain in the butt to pay the bill every year. I didn't want to wait around another 15 years. Well, that person bought it, and they sold it, and they made about 6 grand per lot on top of me. They actually made more money than I did, but I didn't care. You know why? Here's the best part of it. Landowners are detached from the property. I don't have an emotional connection. My kids didn't grow up there. I didn't grow up there. And honestly, I've spent maybe 5 minutes on the lot in my entire life. I have no connection. I have no idea what it looks like. I never mowed the lawn. I never took care of it. And for that reason, it is just an asset sitting on a piece of paper. And one day I want to sell it. Maybe I want to buy a boat. Maybe I want to get a new fishing gear or something like that. And that's how most landowners think. Now, for the longest time, people came after me. I'll give you 3,500. I'll give you 4,500, 5,500. I just had to wait them out. Hindsight's 50-50. I should have held on to it another 5 to 7 years because the lots are going around 55 grand right now. So you have to be very patient. So when people buy lots, they're either going to buy it for future builds, for a dream they have, which is perfectly normal, or they're going to buy it for an investment. And I'm going to teach you today how to kind of distinguish between the two because they're important. Now, the person that's going to buy it to build a dream home will typically pay you much, much more, and they're much easier to work with. Investment people are trying to figure out when the curve for the demand for that land is going to go up. So if you know that going into it, that's what you want to understand. So my favorite part is I just gave you an exact example of a deal I sold and how I thought as a vacant landowner. And I thought today would be best to show you if you can get inside your seller's head and think like they do, like somebody has a single family home, or today we're talking all about vacant land, then that's how you want to think when you're in this process. Because so many times we try to think for our sellers. You got to go immerse yourself and think like somebody owns a piece of vacant land. Was it their dream home and it just never worked out? The cost of construction's too much, or maybe the family dynamics change, or are they a speculator and they're swinging the bat and they just decided to pull the trigger. Once you know what the triggers are for any type of land buyer, it's actually very easy to basically qualify anybody in this process. So that's what we're breaking down. The other one I tell you is it's less emotional than single family houses. Single family houses, guys, there's just so much emotion involved in it. It's actually sometimes draining. And I don't talk about it often, but let's face it, we're talking about properties and we're meeting with sellers and connecting with them on an emotional level. And they're talking about their home. And I don't know about you, but the reality is the home is wherever your heart is. It's where you grew up. It's where you feel most comfortable, you're the most loved. And so that's why we always want a deep connection on a single family home. Now we go over to vacant land. All of a sudden, that emotional stuff that I teach on single family homes, it's not nearly as important. It doesn't mean I don't try to dig for it, but there's less stuff attached to it. And for that reason, they're much simpler transactions. And some people really like that. To me, it's a little bit harder, honestly, because I'm used to connecting with people. So I hate when people remove all emotions. I get it for a business decision, but as a real estate guy, investor, wholesaler, I want to be able to connect on an emotional level. So if people are detached, they're not emotional about it, you need to know going into it. So here's the biggest play, I'll tell you. People selling land is all a timing piece. So think about me. For 15 years, I owned this land for around $3,000. And just no. And one day, yes. And you know who got the deal? It's who was ever in front of me at the time. I didn't even actively try to sell the property. I just didn't care. And even my accountant's like, why don't you just get this thing off the books? It's not going anywhere. And sure enough, after I sold it, it went through the roof. Why? I wasn't paying attention to the land. I wasn't focused on the value, the trends, and where it's going on. That's where you have to identify what the demand for vacant land is. And if you can identify land and you can find the right types of cash buyers and identify which pocket they fall in, you could do some serious damage in vacant land. Why? It goes fast, they're detached, and it's less emotional, which means you can go through these transactions faster. And one of my most favorite parts of vacant land is just has highly, highly flexible terms, period. People are very easy on like selling you a land. And what do I mean about like flexible terms? The reality is it's not as structured as single family homes. So 90% of most vacant land is paid for how? It's paid for with cash. And cash is king. Cash rules when it comes to real estate. And because it's paid in cash, they're highly flexible kind of in the terms. You can get creative financings with them. And honestly, if someone paid a couple $1,000s a piece of land and you offered them a couple $1,000 and then to finance the rest of it for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, then you're making money over money and it's easy. It's very clean. There's no subject to here. There's no takeover of anybody else's debt. They just record a mortgage against the property and you make payments. And then that gives you the ability to turn around and get creative and sell the deal creatively because you can actually yield more money doing that. And why not make the seller the bank? People do it all over the country. I don't do this a lot because my entire focus, not vacant land. When it falls in my lap and it makes sense, I execute. And that's how I'm going to teach you how to do wholesaling and vacant land, because if you truly focus on wholesaling, you're going to get some flip-flop leads that just pop into your folders. And most of you go like, hell, I have this piece of vacant land. They're motivated. Rick, I don't know what to do with it. Let's take this video, go through and show you how to do it. So rule number one. So I just gave you all the advantages why I like land and vacant land. And some people either focus on vacant land. Some people do it exclusively. Why not do a blend of both? Why be pegged in a corner? Why be stuck? And I'm telling you, if you'll open up your horizons, if I can teach you how to do regular wholesaling, creative financing, and teach you how to wholesale vacant land, there's just some subtle difference in doing vacant land, and we're going to go over it right here, right now. So number one, the simplest thing you do is we talk about flexible terms. People ask me, well, Rick, how long should I put it under contract for? This is the easiest part. Because vacant landowners are so detached, are highly less emotional, and they're not living in the property, they usually give you a lot of flexibility to close. It's never like a 7 or 10 day close. I don't care. So when we teach you about single family houses, in our perfect world, 90 days would be perfect to anything in wholesaling. But let's be honest, that is not the rule. So I always teach in single family houses, go for 30 days. 30 days is just a good fit. 30 days gives you time, and especially if you're new to wholesaling. Why? Because you need to basically sell your contract to your vetted cash buyers that hopefully you've already set up with it. So if we know that going into it, then we have flexible terms. 90 days is what you want to get these under contract for. You're like, Rick, why 90 days? Why 3 times longer than regular houses? Well, here's the challenge. It takes longer to sell vacant land because number one, you probably don't have a lot of cash buyers for your land. And by the way, I'm going to get rid of the word cash buyers for land because land is basically assumed people pay cash for it. Even large giant lots of land, which I own, I pay cash for. I have some self-financing involved. Banks want to see like your skin in the game. So usually when you have to acquire any type of land, especially raw land, you're paying cash. So this rest of this video, we'll talk about, when we talk about land buyers, just assume they're all cash because that's how most of them go down. Now, 90 days. Why? Because you need time. And 90 days flies by when you do vacant land. Remember, it is a smaller niche of buyers in a set geographical area that have to pay cash for it and have to have the vision of either speculating on that project as an investment or buying it for like their dream home, their second home, or doing like a spec build. And because of that, they just take more time. So if you do less than 90 days, you're probably most likely going to get disappointed until you get into the flow of this business. And I'm going to teach you about it. So the key to doing vacant land wholesaling is you simply have to do it in reverse order. Now, you can do this in your regular wholesaling business, but you can't do it all the time. It doesn't always work out that way because people are crafty. People will steal deals from you. Really, in wholesaling land, I never, ever had an issue with someone stealing a piece of land from me. In fact, it's the opposite. You'll actually get more people that want to work together and collaborate to help you sell. And so JVing on vacant lands, if you can find someone that has cash buyers in your particular market, it is a great opportunity. So here's what I want you to do. You have to do it in reverse order. Yes, I'm going to do live one-on-ones as soon as I'm done with our teachable moment. So if we're swapping them and do it in reverse order, Rick, how does it look? It's real simple. Number one, the reason you have to do it in reverse order is one of the hardest traits in buying vacant land for wholesaling purposes is identifying demand. If you can't identify demand, you're going to waste time contracting properties that nobody wants to buy. If you don't believe me, go out and try this. I've been stuck in this land buying hell part of it. You have to identify demand. If there's no demand, it doesn't matter what you put it under contract. You are not going to make any money doing it. I see a lot of wholesalers running around with their head cut off, buying vacant land in the middle of nowhere. It's going to be a tough sell. So I want to go places where buyers, and once again, we're going to refer to these as cash buyers. Anyone who buys land is going to be cash going forward in this video, is I got to find out where they're going. So like, how can I do that? How do I find land buyers? It's so simple. If you know you got to find your land buyers first, and you can't change this order no matter how much you do it. Because I watch you guys put properties under contract, and you're like, you think you can find a buyer for this? And you tell me where it is. I go, unless you have a cash buyer list already set up, it's going to be a real challenge. How many days you got under contract? Well, I got under contract for 30 days. I go, you better start smiling and dialing for the next 72 hours and don't get off the phone until you do it, because it's going to be a tough sale. So we are going to do it in reverse order. We're going to identify the vacant land demand. So as I did, so when we're going in reverse order, we have to identify what are the types of buyers. So there's two classifications. There's speculators, and then there's end users. Speculators are people that are making an investment that never want to hold the property past a certain amount of time frame, although their time frame usually gets stretched because of the market conditions. And the other one is someone who wants to build like their dream home on it. You find someone who wants to build a dream home on any type of piece of vacant land, they will usually pay you the absolute most. And these types of buyers are basically what I call kind of private end users. And these are basically people, not even developers. They want to buy the land, and either they custom build their home or they go out and find their own builder. I love these people because they know exactly what they want, and they'll pay you tippy top dollars. If you ever get them, go crazy with them. So the next one you do is going to be independent builders. These are people who build custom homes. They're looking for particular lots. The good news is they'll pay more. They do have cash, but they'll only buy so many lots. And they like to buy lots in neighborhoods where they're already building because they already have a crew there and they want to move them over. I do like working with them. They will work with you on via assignment of contract, and so will the private end users. Now, let's talk about the dirty one, which nobody ever seems to want to bring this up, are developers. These are the big time developers. I'm not going to use names because I tend to get in trouble when I use people's names, but like the big ones traded on the public stock market. These people want to buy everything, and they want to use their paperwork, and they want to obligate you like forever. They are basically your hedge fund on a much bigger scale because, number one, they will not buy your property on assignment of contract. They have a strict policy against it. Don't ask. The reason is they want to obligate you for 90 to 120 days, and they have the right to back up right up to the closing. So if market conditions change, they're going to leave you at the altar, and they want stuff really, really cheap, and they want a lot of land all at once. So, and they want to pulse their buys so they don't tie up all their capital. So every time they sell the house, they free up more money, and they play the cash flow game. And for this reason, they're going to be your most difficult buyers, and they're the ones I try to avoid at all costs. Very rarely do I ever sell to a big time developer because it's just such a pain in the butt. And you got to understand that. So if we know we got to do this in reverse order, then we have to look for the land buyers, AKA cash buyers for these types of properties. So do this first. Do not mix up going out and finding the vacant land first. Go find the cash buyers because they're going to point you to where the demand for people that are looking to buy vacant lots. If there's demand, you have a market, and if you have a market, you can make money. So many of you guys go out and contract properties because it's like, oh, I really like this place. It's got a stream. Listen, it's great, but your personal like doesn't mean there's a market for it. So what you need to do is get this little thing we call data. And data doesn't lie. Data's going to tell you the truth. People can manipulate data, but data will stare at you and just tell you the truth. It's like taking your pulse. It's like taking your temperature. You can't sway it. You can try to put it under a hot light when you're trying to get out of school one day, but for the most part, it's going to take a temperature of what's going on in the market now. So here are the land filters we simply want to use. Don't worry, this is recorded. You can refer back to this video. It's simple. Number one, you have to have a specific area. Please do not shoot all over the United States and go, I'm just going to find the prettiest pasture, the prettiest place to buy land. No. Go out and find a specific area. Now, if you've never done this before, it's really simple. You can go to all sorts of land sites where they sell vacant land, stuff like that, and just start looking up demand. It's not hard to do. I've done countless videos on this. I'm not going to tie up a bunch of time doing it because we're doing this in reverse order. So number one, find an area. I like to find zip codes. You can start with a city. You can start with a county. So you go county, city, area code. This is where you're getting your intel to find out where there is a market for vacant land. You see, if you go out and contract vacant land and you don't know what the market is, you waste your time and you won't make any money. So this is not just my opinion. Everyone who does it, this is the way it's done. And this is the way it's been done for 20 plus years since I've been in real estate. And it's probably been done for hundreds of years like this before, even with the old time settlers coming to America. Find out where people want to live. Is it convenient? Is there a food source? Is there water? Are there schools? Are there public museums? Are there public libraries? Is there transportation? What's the political environment? And you look at all that. So people are moving around the United States more than they ever have. They're fleeing particular cities that have massive amounts of crime. People are looking to retire in their dream home, and this is where vacant land becomes a lot of fun. So find that area. So just start with the counties, start with the state you want to pick, and find where you think somebody would go to. So you can take your personal opinion, but you can't use that as the final testimony on how you're going to buy land, and you got to understand that. Now, people ask me always, so Rick, so if I pull up this information, how far back do I go? Now, here's the problem. Land is less transactionable, meaning it's not as heavy as single family homes. So you're going to have to be a little bit more open. You will have to start at least 6 months out. Why? Because these people don't buy a property every 2 or 3 months. Some developers do something like that. For the most part, here's what I'm going to start out, a 6 to 9 month time frame. Why? Because I'm looking for transactions in that specific area for vacant land. And by the way, you can pull this up in any of the filters. I'll share the websites to go to. And you want to find out in a 6 to 9 month period what the buying trends are. Now, you can go out to a year. My problem with a year is you miss kind of the trend curve. 6 months would be a perfect world. 9 months is about as far as you go a year. A lot of things change in 1 year. So remember, you've got to look at the last sales as the most important economic data you can look when wholesaling vacant land. The tail end of that curve, that last 90 days, is going to tell you everything you want to know. It'll point you in directions. You can see it on a map, and it's really cool. Now, the easiest part to do, go over to listrei.com or dmzac.com, and you can actually go into these filters, and you can find these cash buyers for land. It's real simple. I've done entire videos on this. I don't want to duplicate the exact same video, but just go in there and use these filters, guys. They're simple, they're straightforward. And remember, here's the key. Most of these people pay cash for them. So you want all these properties to be free and clear that they bought. So here's the really cool thing is the criteria we use to find our cash buyers to find a demand is almost the same criteria we're going to use to find land for sale because they're the same type of people. And that's the crazy part about this. Some people are just better at it than others, and some people have a plan, and some people have no plan at all. And your job is to basically take advantage of people who buy land that have no idea what the value is. And if the number hits them perfect at the right time, it's a quick decision. And you remove most of the emotion from attachment and the emotional issues on single family homes. Because remember, these are properties, sellers view them as homes. When we talk about vacant land, they are nothing more than a property to them. They don't live there, they're not there, and they have a lot of flexibility with it. So keep this in mind too, guys. When you do it, I'm going to go back to this one because this is important to emphasize this. When we talk about a 90-day ideal contingency period, people say, well, Rick, what happens if I can't find a buyer for it in that period? You get out of the contract. That's it. And by the way, I would say nationally on average, about 50% of vacant land deals fall apart. And here's the wild part. Sellers do get bothered by it, but not nearly like they do a single family home. They get it, they understand it, and they know when they sign up with a long contingency period that there is a risk that you might not close on it or ask for a deeper discount. So ask for the 90 days. The reason for it is you need the time for it. And with that flexibility, the worst case scenario, if you had to get out of it, remember, they don't live in the house, they don't have to move out of the house, and there's no damages to them. Make sure you honor that request. Listen, if you can't find a buyer soon and you screwed up like the year and you didn't research the demand for it, get out. Like, don't tie them up forever. That's not fair to do that. And remember, you're selling the contract, you're not selling the property. Huge debate on this country on how that goes. If you do wholesaling right, you don't have to compete with all these ridiculous guru videos on what's legal, what's not. If you're just selling the contract, you sell them privately and you don't put it all over the internet and you don't act like a realtor and you don't have a realtor's license, you're never going to have a problem with wholesaling. The problem is wholesalers trying to act like realtors, and now they're trying to say, we want wholesale rights. You can't get them both. And that's another day, another topic. So this is why I like the 90 days. So if we know that, we're going into it. So let's talk about vacant land buyer criteria. So the most important aspect you've got to understand, you got to do this in reverse order. You have to get your cash buyers first. There's no other way to do it. It's so frustrating when you get a vacant land under property. Now, sometimes one just falls in your lap. And I've had lots of examples. You guys come and they go, Rick, I called this guy in a single family home, but he says he owns this other property out in Mexico or Arizona. And he's owned it for like 10 years. And I made him an offer. He said yes. And he gave me a 90-day contingency period. So I'm like, perfect. Go ahead and swing the bat. I'm not telling you not to do those deals. So don't like mix it up. But if you're getting into it and you go, Rick, I want to add this to my portfolio. This is a method I want to add. Go get your cash buyers for land first. Why? Because it's going to point you in the right direction. And it's going to save you a lot of time and aggravation because you can't, it doesn't matter what price you get. If you're in a poor market where there's little to no demand, you're going to get killed. You're just going to work for free. Let's just say it how it is. And I don't want you to do that. So you have to go where the demand for the buyers are. Remember, all buyers of vacant land, in my opinion, are cash. I've rarely seen it differently unless it's a major giant property. So, so the first thing we do is basically we look for vacant land in a geographical area. I kind of squeezed this all in and I apologize, but this is a summary. You're looking for vacant land. You pick your geographical area. You pick your lot size because it's important to know, but like I'm not overly particular on lot size. So lot size is usually a quarter, a half, a full acre, or acreage. And then the last part of this, which, well, you know what? I cut it all in there. So vacant land, geographical area. Start with a county. It's hard to do it by state. Go with county. And remember, you're going to the counties where you've already found cash buyers buying vacant land. They're going to tell you where it is. You don't get to say where it is because if you do, you're going to put a lot of stuff under contract and you're going to waste a lot of time. The next one is lot size. As I said, quarter, half, full acre, and then acreage after that. That's the typical one. And last, and most importantly, make sure every one of these lots that you're negotiating are free and clear. That means they have 100% equity. Most of these properties, they are going to buy with cash. And the thing with that is people like to get their cash back, especially speculators. So I had a 3 to 5 year plan on those lots in Palm Bay. It took 15 years. I had no idea. And most people don't want to wait 15 years. It's just too, even I thought it was ridiculous. But remember, I went into it as a speculator. Like I didn't look to wholesale and flip the vacant land. So when someone called me and go, listen, I'll just wire you the money. Here's the deal. And I made sure they had like cash and I put them on the hook for it. But in my mind, I only paid $3,000. They were offering me, I think the initial was 10. We settled on 13. One of them I sold for 15, but they sold them in the low 20s after that. I researched that. Like I thought it was a brilliant move. I just didn't care. I got tired of paying the bills and I felt like it was going nowhere. And I wanted to move that money into a higher performing asset. And it didn't work out for me. And I'm just walking you through the decision process when people look to sell vacant land. That's all you got to understand. It's completely different from a house. So you have to have this intel, and it's so important. So you've got to understand the biggest thing I can tell you this, you've got to find your land buyers first. End of story. There is no other way to do this. If you don't find your land buyers first, you are going to waste a ton of time in this business. And that's the last thing I want you to do.